Okay, thank you guys for coming. I'm really happy that you're here, all of you.
Thank you.
I think we can start by having a short introduction of each of one of us, so we know who we are. And maybe we can start with Jocelyn. You want
With a mouthful.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, we're gonna start with Rob then. Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob. I'm an artist, and I'll be talking a lot later, so I'll just say hi.
Hello, my name's Kevin, and I'm a musician.
You play. I am Lily, and I write songs and I sing sometimes because I have to. If I don't sing, nobody's gonna sing it. So that's it.
Can we know where are we from?
Oh, that's good too. Yeah, like where are we from? Yeah.
Originally,
Yeah, originally.
I'm from Iran. I'm Persian.
I'm from Turkey.
Well, I'm from Toronto, from Finnish background.
Oh, hi, I'm Edgar. I'm the photographer for today.
Okay.
And from Ottawa, originally from Guatemala.
And Edgar, yesterday he was showing his movie at So Video last night. And yeah, so it was very good. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nata, and I'm originally from Germany. I'm a visual artist. I'm also a writer. I also do, if I do work, which is at times infrequent, installations, and I would say, art promoter. And I've done a lot of classes with kids also, outside of art and mask building. So I'm, just a creative person, I would say. Because I just remembered I do photography too. So. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Lucila. I'm a musician and I do like art music facilitation with youth and also like mixed media stuff. Ancestrally from El Salvador and grew up in Ottawa.
Hi, my name is Saba. I'm I don't know exactly. I like embroidery, sewing, craft, and photography.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm originally from Palestine, but I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I finished it here.
And are you gonna show us some of your work today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
I have some stuff. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Yacha. I'm a painter and a registered art therapist, and teach painting, and born in England to refugee Polish parents.
I'm Rennie. I'm an artist as well. I'm part of Petra, and I were part of the RIA home culture organization, if you want to call it, a mock institution. And that's all I'll say.
I'm Petra, an artist and a writer.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to say where I'm from. I'm from Blackburn Hamlet. Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm originally from Poland, but that's, I find it hard to consider myself an immigrant because I've been here for 52 years. So.
I'm Carmel Whittle. I'm Irish non-status Mi'kmaq from Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm also community outreach and Indigenous liaison for Gallery 101. And I'm a visual artist, songwriter, musician. And I'm grateful to be here on Algonquin territory. And thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
My name is Claudia Salguero. I'm from Colombia, and I'm a community engaged artist and a musician.
My name is Kathy. I'm from the U.S. and I'm a visual artist and poet.
Hi, my name is Mirana. I'm a visual artist in community arts. Do community arts work with Alejandro as well in social engaged work. I'm really happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn, and I'm Inano Cree from Attawapiskat. I'm also Eo Cree from Chisasibi Cree First Nation. so that makes me an authentic Turtle Islander. And somebody over here said, you know, I don't consider myself an immigrant. Well, I've got news for you. Unless you're an authentic Turtle Islander, everyone is an immigrant. And I needed to say that because I've also noticed there's a hierarchy amongst, you know, people of European descent. And where they have this, like the European immigrants are at the top, and people of color, or what they call new immigrants, are lower class. And so I have taken to calling everyone an immigrant who is not a Turtle Islander, because I wanting to bring everyone off their high horse and get them to sit at the same level as all of us. And so you are all guests on Turtle Island. And so part of my work, I do traditional beadwork, you know, traditional Cree beadwork. I'm also aspiring to do a documentary with Alejandro's help. And I also sing, and I'm also a writer. Yes. And part of my artistry is in my activism.
Yeah.
Which I just happens.
And it's good that you mentioned that, because when I started the coalition, I was thinking that would be only for immigrants. But then there were people that they wanted to be here, but they were like, but I don't know if I'm an immigrant. So, you know, those categories, like what is the meaning of being an immigrant, you know? And then I opened the category to immigrant and immigrant descendant. And then that means everybody. There is not indigenous people. You know, and then and that's why there is the Multicultural Artists Coalition, because anybody from any culture can be part of this coalition. Although the first project that I'm doing with the city is mainly with immigrants, because when I did the application for getting the funding, they wanted that category. But I think this is just the first project to grow and then expand into everybody. And other thing that I think is important to know of this coalition is that it's organized by artists. So there is no third parties, there is no art administrators. We, the artists, are the art administrators ourselves. And I think it's important because sometimes with other organizations, when they get funding, a lot of the funding goes for organizing, and then for the artists, there is little funding. You know, so they get, you know, like $20,000, and then for the artists it's like $200, and then what is the rest? You know, like so we need to be organized if we want to avoid that third party that is gonna get all the funding, and then they're gonna advocate for us if we don't advocate for ourselves. You know, so if we don't stand and organize, then someone is gonna do it, and they're really organized. So then we need to be organized too. So today, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about the project for those who are new here, because last time the ones that were here, I spoke like 2 hours of what is this project. But I'm gonna do like a short description of the project. So basically, we are building a report that is constructed by the community. So this report is gonna be presented to the City of Ottawa, their staff, and the partner staff. So, you know, Ontario Arts Council, Canada Council of the Arts, MASC. Everybody's going to be sitting, and the community is the one that is going to present the report. And then we're going to have an afternoon where we're going to sit together, find solutions. Maybe we're going to have some performances, like singers, so we can select someone from the community to present to. And this is the first stage from a long-term process of empowering the community. And basically, it's a community capacity building workshop. So that's a weird word, but what it means is like how the community can achieve their goals to a better capacity. And a better capacity means bigger scale, bigger audience, and bigger impact in the city. So we need to find strategies to achieve that. You know, like we all here are professional artists, and professional doesn't mean that we went to academy, and that's something that I'm going to talk later. You know, like how we need also to decolonize certain concepts, and at the same time, when we decolonize concepts, we need to decolonize policy. So how can we also invite institutions to consult communities before creating the policies? Because those policies are going to affect everybody, but then not everybody's participating on creating the policies. But there is certain levels of hierarchy that we could deconstruct, you know? And I think the city of Ottawa is open to dialogues, and I think they are supporting these meetings. So it's important that we create a strong report. So then when we're gonna ask something, we know what we are asking, you know? So that's really important. So today, I'm gonna show you like a sketch of the report. It's based on the previous meetings that we had. And then after that, I'm gonna ask you 4 questions. The 4 questions is gonna be like, what is your profession? What is the obstacles that you're finding in the city to achieve your goals? What are your goals? And then what are the solutions that you propose to overcome those obstacles? And then in the last part of the meeting, we're gonna do networking, because one of the main problems that we found is the lack of networking. So then there are several people here that they want to invite you to different stuff and projects and opportunities. So they're gonna have their time to also share with all of you what can be possible if we just get together, you know? So thank you. I'm gonna start with the report. This is the report that we're gonna show. We don't know when, because everything was planned to be done. Deadline was May, but then we were supposed to start in September, and we never got the funding until December. So everything moved. So everything is like moved on time. So yeah, so there is no rush to do the report now, but I think it's important that we start doing this with time, so we give like a strong piece of information that could help us to propose changes in policies. You know? And also the city is really like looking to do this. Like they created the Equity and Inclusion Committee, and I'm gonna be there part in that committee. So it's important that if you have like some comments, some policy making too, I could be a bridge with you and that committee. So the committee, there are only 12 artists and art administrators from different ethnicities and all the demographic categories that they always invent, like seniors, youth, LGBTQI2S. So there's like different representatives or spokespersons of those categories, and I guess I will be like the immigrant person of color. I don't know what yeah, like
person of interest.
Yeah.
That could mean many things.
Yeah.
Terrorist file.
Yeah.
Person of interest. Yeah.
So yeah, this is the report that I've been building with all the information that I gathered until now. So this report aims to identify the obstacles that inhibit our community of immigrant and refugee artists living in the city of Ottawa to achieve our goals of better capacity, larger scale, larger audience, and larger impact, and propose strategies to overcome them. So yeah, basically I already explained that. How? With public consultations. So these are part of the public consultations that I'm doing, but also with private consultations. So sometimes I just meet with people personally, and we have this talk. And also in informal talks, you know, like sometimes what I've been finding is like sometimes in informal talks I get more information that when you are actually doing the public consultations, so then people feel like, oh, I shouldn't say that, you know, like. But sometimes you're just having a coffee with a person, and then they can tell you, you know, actually what are the real problems. And those are one of the main problems that I have with statistics, you know, because the city and every, you know, like I think in Western society, we always base everything on statistics. And we think the statistics is neutral information, you know, and then if you don't have statistics, then you're out. But how are we getting the statistics? Who is getting it? You know, who is getting a question? You know, like the report that we were presenting yesterday, I never had the chance to answer to the questions. You know, like the Cultural Alliance, what is the name? Cultural Ottawa Cultural Alliance.
Were you there?
No, I wasn't there. So I was never invited. and I was never consulted. So like they are showing information, but I wonder like who answered those
I was
questions.
there, so they
Yeah.
asked like as you're doing like
Yeah.
broad
Yeah.
people
Where
from
did-
all over. So
Where did you hear about that?
Yeah, it's weird,
it
connected.
was everywhere. So
What?
it was on
Yeah.
Facebook. It was maybe more in Twitter than in Facebook. Maybe
And
I have
what
a
was
Twitter
it?
account. It was the Cultural Summit.
Yeah.
Cultural Summit
Yeah.
Alliance.
It's
And
also-
it was the summit. The Cultural Alliance is an alliance of many different institutions
Yeah.
that are working in the same thing that you're working, but in a
Bigger scale. Yeah.
big scale, like
Yeah.
trying to figure out what is the future of the culture in Ottawa. So
But
they're
you're right.
trying to change.
It was promoted on different platforms. You mentioned Arts Ottawa East, now Arts Network of Ottawa, its
Yeah.
new name. So I think people should sign up with certain services and you get
Newsletters
emails
and-
all the time. They'll tell you what's going on.
I am with certain services.
Well, then, Arts Ottawa East, now Arts Network Ottawa, it promoted that a lot and a lot of other things.
Excuse me. Also, Art
Yes, I'm
Engine.
not so-
Through
yeah.
Art
Art
Engine,
Engine?
there was lots of
I am on
information.
Art Engine, I must have.
I didn't get it too. Well, what is important to know is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
basically, like statistic is always leaving people out. So, we can't say, like because, there's certain statistics and then say, that's true. Like it may not be true. And maybe some people I was left out, you were left out, but other they were included. So that's important to know,
Yeah.
That's why what I'm doing when I'm doing this report is not based on statistics. It's based on consultation with you. And I'm not gonna say this is the truth because I don't know, maybe we are leaving a lot of people out, But it's something that's coming from the community, and I think that's important because I have a problem with advocacy. Like when institutions are advocating for us, it's like who gave them that power? Like I was never.
Who are they?
Yeah, who are they? Who are they? I don't want to know them. Like then there's these big names of institutions, but I don't know anybody there, and they're advocating for me. So I will love to know who is the person that is advocating for me. Identify obstacles, lack of understanding between the City of Ottawa staff, partners, artists, and the audiences, lack of networking, cultural barriers, language barriers, economic barriers, lack of access to resources, systematic barriers, and advocacy and development dependency projects. So, cultural barriers. This part is really, maybe I need to change this part because maybe it's using a lot of words that are not democratic, but I think it's important sometimes to use academic language to give some weight to what I'm saying. So one of the problems is the concept of art as a universal and homogeneous structure is an artificial construction imposed by Western powers. And what I mean there is like they have certain idea of what is art. And that idea, it may not be the idea that we have from our cultures. So when they are creating policy, they are using the Western idea of art, but then they are leaving out so many other ways of thinking and doing art. And then there is a problem there because when people are applying, then they don't access to funding because what they're doing is not art. It's craft or or it's an incomplete idea, or it's folklore. So all these words, it's colonialism because it's thinking and imposing a way of thinking there is only one way, and there is only not one way. And it's important to speak this because we are getting more and more diverse society. So like now we have people from everywhere. That means that we're gonna start thinking how we're gonna organize a multicultural society. How that would it look like? And like Canada, since I think 1974, they had the multicultural declaration. So it's basically that Canada is a multicultural country with Trudeau father. But I think they haven't achieved that yet. And when you see people that is in power and taking decisions and making policy, it's not multicultural. What I see in the streets is multicultural. I go to the streets, I go to the gym, and I see people from everywhere. But when I see the board directors of members, that's not multicultural. So I think there is a gap there that it needs to be addressed. the concept has been created in Western Europe nations and has been legitimized as universal knowledge by power knowledge institutions like universities and academias. Is a concept that is being constructed in modern scientific positivism, and that means like they think that because we use the word science, then it's true. And one example is the one that I was saying, like for example, statistics. People think that statistics is neutral and it's true, and then like if someone gives you statistics, then you need to be quiet. That's what the statistics says, and it's like, how do you know that actually that information is correct? Like what method were you using? Like who was asking? I'm sure that if someone comes to ask you, and is a white person or a black person, or young or elder, you're gonna have a different reaction and different responses. So
depending on the kind of question and how the question
how they're
is,
asking,
the words, yeah, it's like
there are so many factors that could alter the information that we need to doubt on Western positivism. And positivism is that they think that because we use a scientific method of knowledge, then we are gonna get certainty. And I think certainty is something that is ending now. Like we're getting in a time in which like everything is relative, and we need to find a new way to organize knowledge. And then there is the question like, how is this related to art? And I think I'm going to try to answer that. These are the assumptions of Western epistemology. Western epistemology means the Western way of creating knowledge. So the notion of archival stability, they think that because everything has been archived, then it's a stable source of knowledge. But then archiving, again, is a subjective activity. For example, the project Petra, you have a salon that is coming, and it's about a project of an artist, an archivist, yes, that she is taking photograph of indigenous people, First Nations in Canada, that were left out of their archive and they didn't have a name. So the project is named.
It's different. She works at the archives.
Yeah.
And they have nameless people, especially from the indigenous communities from all over from all over the country, yeah, especially in the north. So while she was working on the project in the north, it's called Project Naming. So what the archives, it's a reconciliation project basically. Yeah. It's what the archives is doing is trying to find the people or relations to people that are on those photographs, and asking them to give them the names so that they have the names there. So.
And the names also of the First Nations, like what group was, because because from a colonial perspective, then all the photographs were archived as indigenous or Indians. Right. But there are Inuit, there is Métis, there is Cree, Mohawks, so the project naming is also giving allocation of that knowledge. Yes. So basically, that's what I mean with archival stability. Like all the knowledge that we have is based on that, and they think is neutral. But once again, like who is archiving, what is being selected, and what is being out of the archive. So those are questions that we need to make in everything that we do. For example, in art, like why when we go to school, the ones that we were studying history of art, all the history of art is white male artists. Where are the female artists? Now in the last century, because feminism has been pushing and giving all these questions to, then we have more women, more people of color in books. But and when you study Impressionist, white men, Renaissance, white men, Baroque, white men. So what is the meaning of that? What are we leaving out of those archives? The neutrality of the scientist and academic, is basically that notion that because you're an academic, then you're neutral and you're creating objective knowledge. But I think there is always subjectivity. There is no way to become objective. We always are thinking, seeing, analyzing from your conceptual background. So, and if we here being multicultural, we can understand that. The way we understand art is different. So if I'm going to write a report on art, and then the word art means something for me, that report from the same piece is going to be so different coming from different perspectives. So that neutrality doesn't exist. There is always a subjectivity that is writing. Stability of disciplines and clear margins. So basically, it's like, you know, science is science, politics is politics, sociology is sociology. But I think reality is more complex, and then the limits of those disciplines sometimes they get blurred. And when we mix those disciplines, we can get a wider understanding of social phenomena and reality too. Nation state as a main and unique apparatus of political power and agency, that doesn't matter here. Assumptions within the art disciplines. Separation between high culture, folklore, and popular culture. You know, and I think I know so many people disagree with me, but I think, you know, in my perspective, I think there is certain level of hierarchy when we talk about high culture and when we talk about folklore, and then we look down to the people that is doing folklore, or we look down to the people that is doing a handcraft or craft. But I think those are impositions that come from Western knowledge, you know, and usually it jives the other culture's art as the lower culture. You know, so then what we call art, it comes from the perspective of Western Europe. And what Africans call art, oh no, that's folklore. So, you know, and the perfect example is thinking in Picasso, taking the artifacts, you know, from Africans, and then he makes them art, you know, but if an African does it, it's not art. And I have so many discussions in academia, so many people would disagree with me, I understand, but I think it's important to make those questions too. Exclusion of certain artistic practices from official art sector, and I think that's related to your work. You know, like I know you do work that is sewing, and sometimes it's hard for you to apply because then it's like, oh, you know, this is not art, or this doesn't match in a art space exhibition. And I think we need to start addressing that and decolonizing also art exhibitions, art spaces, and having giving more access to everybody. Patriarchal and white supremacy structure of history of art, which is, I already spoke about that. It is clear. Notes: not all art disciplines are at the same level of decolonization. So I was thinking, for example, in music, how music has been a little more decolonized. So then, you know, when we study jazz music, you know, we are studying, you know, like African American composers or Cuban composers. That doesn't happen in painting, you know, or it doesn't happen in theater. So I think we can just say, oh, all the disciplines are the same. And for me, that came clear last meeting, because I was thinking, oh, you know, all artists were in the same problem, but then I realized each discipline is different and has different obstacles and different struggles. The process of dismantling patriarchy in music hasn't been achieved, because although we study a lot of black composers, they're black male composers, not female, not women, or LGBTQ. So you know, like, decolonizing is a long process, and we need to be active on that process. And then the decolonization of music as a discipline relates to the exponential growth of market, increasing demand by global audiences, and improving access to funding by immigrant refugee musicians. The fine arts and theater, on the contrary, fine arts and theater immigrant artists, directors, writers, actors experience a high level of marginalization from official and alternative circuits because of the lack of understanding produced by the exclusion of authors and knowledge beyond Europe and Euro-America from the official archives of history and art disciplines. There is a low demand in their work. So yeah, so basically here is when I'm trying to explain and connect everything. What I was talking about archiving and disciplines is related to art disciplines as professionals, because what they consider art is because they left out from the archives other type of art, other painters, other composers, other theater writers and directors. So then that creates an official knowledge that has a lot of gaps. and those gaps have ethnic gaps and racial gaps. So I know so many people, they want to avoid the racial ethnic discourse, and me too. But I think sometimes I see it continuously when I'm studying and opening the books, and then I think we need to address it, because that needs to change. But I think it's better to also not stay there too much, because then it becomes like kind of like victimizing ourselves, and we need to empower ourselves rather than victimizing ourselves. Common aspect between all disciplines is the marginalization of seniors. So that's something that it was really clear in the last meeting. It's like music, theater, everything, like seniors are more marginalized than everybody.
Can I just mention also that we have to look at the ableist world that we're also living in. So it's really significant that we look at, because I just did some study on music and disability.
Yeah.
And it's a world that's...
Yeah, that is... I was not even thinking.
Needs some decolonizing as well, but for sure we have to look at how Western-based systems are also based quite a bit on ableist systems.
Yeah.
So the marginalized are sometimes poverty, and certainly those with varying disability.
Ableism is part of that.
Right, and seniors now are seen as disabled, so we're all...
Yeah, it's
with,
true.
with a very contrived system, of course. When I say disability, it's a contrived system that's in place by the Western-based system. So it's important that there be some recognition of that amongst all of us. Because
and for example, when we have dialogues with First Nation, for example, when I talk to Jocelyn, like for them, the elder is the knowledge keeper, and it's totally the opposite. Like, you respect your elders. Like, they have more knowledge than you. Western society is the opposite. Like, the elder is a person that can't produce capital anymore, so then he's useless. So that's the way we think, and how can we start changing those ideas too? And I think art is a good space to have these discussions too, because art is not just about doing beautiful things, but also to challenge society. The artists that we remember, they were challenging society, and they were changing things by painting, by doing theater, but also changing concepts.
I have to say this, I understand what you're trying to say, but it is a bit universal. Like, at least for my culture, I wouldn't go as far as saying we disrespect the elder or they have no place. So, I know what you're trying to say. I just wouldn't go as far as saying Western cultures,
So what would you say?
Well, in Germany, I would say that the way we place and respect and look at elders, they definitely do have their place and their knowledge. I do think society in general has this problem that, age groups have separated too much. The way it was way back, also in Western cultures, is that, the elders were still living as the young, and the young were also taking care of the elders. Thus, the middle-aged ones were given more support, which is also falling away, right? And just in terms of the respecting the knowledge and their output, because you said they have nothing valuable to produce or to offer anymore, and as such, so I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like, what I mean is, Western culture is driven by capitalism, and all the values are given by profit. So then, like, for example, the wars that we live, or the way we classify nations, like first world and second world and third world.
Again, mixing into this one. So it's very, that's why I meant, I understand what you're trying to say, it's just very universal the way you were.
It's too broad, too general.
I just had to feel like, to speak up a bit for my culture with regards to respecting our elders.
Yeah, but I mean, like, this point was brought up by elders in this group.
No, that was in direct relation
that they
what you
felt,
said.
and they didn't felt, they did experience more marginalization from us, like, and it was taught here. So that's why this report is also informed by the community.
No, I don't. That I understand, and I wasn't there. I was referring to what you said.
I think there's another. I think there is a reflection on elders who are entering the art field. Emerging artists are basically considered to be young people. And I think that's a very strict bias. If you want to talk about elder classical composers, they have no problem. They've already established their career. If you're an elder as a dancer, dance is another thing I haven't seen yet. It's worth investigating. But an elder dancer could perhaps become a great choreographer, although they can't dance anymore.
Yeah.
So ages should be looked at in different ways.
Okay.
So what you're
But they
saying
are very
is
popular
kind of like the elder would be kind of like a mentor or someone who
No, not necessarily. There are many elder people that want to begin in their career at times and face strong barriers in terms of getting accepted as emerging
As
artists.
emerging artists, yeah.
Yeah.
The category of yeah, I get it. And it's true, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, strongly agree.
Yeah. Okay, I don't have, I mean, like, maybe you need to meet more with literature people, like writers and cinema and dancers. I'm having these gaps because here we don't have them, but I think we need also to address and ask them, like, okay, like, how are you experiencing, like, being a professional writer or director or dancer in Ottawa and
Maybe spoken word.
Yeah.
Spoken
Spoken word,
spoken
yeah.
word in there and performance art.
Well, when I say fine arts, I include like performance and
Maybe we could break it out.
Stereotypes and intersectional identities. So this is another conversation that came last meeting because, you know, when we say immigrant, then there's certain assumptions of how would it look like how an immigrant looks like, and then I remember talking to Miki. Miki, she's American, so she's an immigrant. But then because she's American, she's not considered an immigrant. But then, you know, like what is the meaning of being an immigrant? And so the contemporary discourse of diversity and multiculturalism is constantly introducing and replacing categories of people. Usually these categories are invented in universities and governmental institutions without the consultation of the communities they will categorize. So there is a lack of self-determination, you know, so there is certain power knowledge against subjugated knowledge. Intersectional identities make difficult to identify the boundaries between these categories. And intersectional, it's kind of like that word, sometimes it's confusing, but it means that there are different systems of power and authority in one society, and then sometimes those systems of power and authority within one person gives you position of authority and privilege and oppression and disempower or oppression. So for example, I'm gonna use my identity. So I'm Colombian, male, upper middle class, immigrant, young. So then, you know, like when I say Colombian, I'm down because we are a third world person. When I say immigrant, I'm down. But also when I say male and we live in patriarchy, then, you know, I'm up. So understanding intersectionality is important to acknowledge our own privilege that we have sometimes. And also when we acknowledge that privilege, we can create solidarity with the other. Because when we say immigrants, maybe we are united as immigrants, but we don't experience the same level of marginalization depending on our cultural, ethnic background, economic background, even like nationality, you know, like coming from a European country wouldn't be the same as coming from an African country. So there are different levels of marginalization there. So this is one of the, a list of categories that they usually use, like racialized people, of people of color. Okay.
So we've been using the term multiculturalism a lot. There's a lot of theorists in critical race theory that have difficulty with this concept. They find it to be divisive and maybe patronizing. And they tend to focus on ideas of universal human rights and indigenous people's rights, and in formulating how we work together, rather than some governments can promote multiculturalism and then have a wonderful picnic or barbecue at the end of the year where you wear your national clothes and then forget about you for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So I think that word itself,
It's
I want to
probably-
understand better how you're using it to get the government money and how the group wants to understand it. Because I know there must be some subversion in this process.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always competition, you know,
Yeah.
from all knowledge that we try to create for the colonized. The way that I think multiculturalism comes also from understanding that there are different epistemologies. There are different ways to create knowledge. So when I say that, what I mean is that there are different knowledges at the same time. And even in English, that is a mistake. When I write knowledges in my computer, it tells me, no, it's a mistake. And it's like, no, it's not a mistake. There are different knowledges. It was like, you are wrong. English is wrong. You know? So that's what I mean by multiculturalism.
Yeah.
It's creating different cultures and system of knowledge that can cohabit and coexist without being the same. No?
I trust you, brother. I'm just saying.
So one of the words that I will invent there, I didn't invent, like I read it, is pluri-universalism.
Yeah.
There is not only one universe, well, there is not only one truth, there are so many truths. And then one of the challenges is like, how are we going to organize that? You know, because
How do you spell that? Pluralism.
I read it
How do you
in...
spell it?
It doesn't exist, but some people is using it now. Pluri, like P-L-U-R-I-S. Pluri. Universalism. So uni means one and pluri means multiple. So it is like multiculturalism. So in that way I use that word.
Yes.
But I know it's like so called
I
like
know.
diversity.
Yeah.
Like everybody use diversity now and then. What is the meaning of diversity? Everybody says, oh, we are diverse, and then I don't know what is the meaning, you know, like could be, yeah.
Yeah, I have a remark to that. For the multiculturalism, we have some certain associations with certain cultures. So for instance, think about an artist coming from South America, and you automatically associate some kind of music, some type of food, some type of behaviors, anything. So they expect you, if you're an artist, if you have a Latin American name, you are expected to deliver that kind of art. And if you are performing such an Asian art, then it looks weird, even in a multicultural environment. I think it's a boundary in our minds.
Yeah. And that's what I mean with stereotyping and the identities. You know, like sometimes when we see this concept, that there's a stereotype that comes to the mind, like, oh, an immigrant then has an accent. And what if you are an immigrant and you don't have an accent? You know, like, but you're an immigrant. And so it's the same. You know, like when I was in school, I was always invited to do folklore art. And I didn't want it, but it's like, no, but you are Colombian, so you need to, you know, like,
You eat arepas.
yeah. No, it's like, I was like, no, I don't want to. You know, it's like, and that's important because when we are applying, these categories are now used for the system that they are using for organizing all the funding system.
Oh, cool.
So then one of the questions that brought out last meeting is like, if that's the best way to organize the funding, or there are other ways, other systems that we could use for organizing the cultural funding, which is a question that is in my mind. I don't know the answer, but it was a good question. At Mickey,
Although, if I can say something, when you are in the diverse group and you're a minority, in my point of view, you have like more options in some applications than in others.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that's why last time I showed the picture of the difference between equity and equality. So equality is when we give all the same opportunity, but we don't acknowledge that people have different skills and different different skills. So for example, let me try to show you the image because I have it here, and it's really useful.
But like barriers as well.
Yeah.
Not just skills, it's like barriers.
Barriers, yeah. So how can we get rid of those systematic barriers, you know, by equity and not equality? So I think that it's important to, and it's what you're saying, you know, like then we need the cultural, the diverse fund we need it. Where is it? Materials.
You know, the name that the way that we are referring to these groups now is equity-seeking groups.
Equity seeking. Oh, okay, yeah, equity seeking, yeah.
Equity
Seeking groups. Looking for equity. So this is the Equity and Inclusion Lens handbook that the City of Ottawa uses.
You don't see it.
Or well, it was until 2018, so I guess they're gonna
It
do
was
something.
developed first in 2008.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much.
So this is. But I just want to show you this little image that it always
It's
it
not
helps
what-
me. Yeah, this one.
It's not
Oh,
also
sorry. There? No. To get it from here. Okay, this one.
Oh yes.
So this is the difference between equity, this is equity, and this is equality. So like it's really didactic, but I think it works to understand the differences. And in the first image, 3 boys of different heights are standing in boxes of the same height to help them look over the wooden fence to watch a ball game, but the shortest boy cannot see over the fence. It is assumed that everyone will benefit from the same supports. In the second image, the tallest boy has no box. The second tallest boy has 1 box, and the shortest boy has 2 boxes to stand on, so that they all are able to see over the fence at the same height. They are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. And then this is what we want to achieve one day. That there are not going to be more systematic barriers, and then we're not going to need the diverse fund anymore. No? Once. Yeah, but I mean, this is a dream, but I think we can work for doing it. Like if we don't work, then nothing is going to change. Maybe it's not going to happen in our timeline, but like when I think in history, I see changes. It's the thing is not there are not lifetime changes, but they are little by little. Like this is a long process.
This is how I view language, especially being a fluent Inninimon speaker. Everywhere I go, I'm being told I must speak English or French. That's the official languages of Turtle Island, and it's like, no, it isn't. English comes from England, French comes from France. You outlawed our language here, and yet you say there's reconciliation, and that's not the truth. Whenever I speak my language, I'm still encountering a lot of discrimination, and a lot of people even accusing me of being a racist for speaking my language. Excuse me, you've been racist here for 526 years. You're still being racist now because you don't service me in Cree. And yet this is the authentic language of Turtle Island. And also there are words and concepts that do not exist in our Cree language that exist in English, and vice versa. And there's this superiority, like white supremacy, white privilege, white entitlement, that says that English is the almighty God of languages, and anything else is not. And that you're somehow less cerebral if you speak another language, and heaven forbid if you speak the Cree language. And even like look at every colonial institution, and this is very, very problematic. It's a big obstacle. So when we're the ones who are carriers of this knowledge, there's a disrespect there, and you're not visible, you're not heard. However, if I have a professor or a researcher or some kind of white man understood profession, if they come to me and they come seeking my knowledge, my craft, my artistry, and they own it as themselves, as part of them.
Their thesis.
They're the holders of that dissertation, and they get to have the letters after their name when it's my work. This is my ongoing living dissertation. All this work that I've been doing. None of you are Cree speakers. It's my work. But yet different people, journalists, professors, writers, you know, people taking documentaries, they're always, it's a theft of Indigenous knowledge. It's a theft of my work. And so there needs to be a recognition that this is my work. I've been doing this for decades, and there needs to be not only recognition and protection, but also like the origins of my work. Like there's a video of my work that went viral universally, and who gets to benefit? CBC has gotten the benefits, like others have gotten the benefits. It's not me. But yet I've been in the forefront of doing this work for so long. And I don't see them, so they want the benefits, but they don't want the death threats that come with it. They don't want the breaking and entering of my home, or the threats against my children that come with it, or the libel and slander and being called a cunt, a bitch, you know, a racist, all those things that come with it. They don't want that. They just want the glory and the money and whatever they can, you know, like for instance, sacred pipes, not pipelines. Sacred pipes, not pipelines. You know, they want to take that. Oh, I'm going to take that. You know, I'm going to turn it into a song. So now other artists have taken what I said, developed songs. So far there's 3 that I know of. And here again, you know, they want the, you know, the goods of it, but nothing else that comes with it. So there needs to be protection there, where
so you mean like kind of like protection to appropriation, to
yes.
avoid appropriation?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And do you think that it should be like by the law or by personal responsibility?
I think I'm a firm believer in authentic sacredhood, nationhood medicine bundle, and with that means original land, original language, original laws. So our traditional laws, original spirituality, original governance, and original ways of knowing. So what I'm saying is there were laws here long before there was common law, civic law, civil law, and canon law, which all originate from Europe. And so I'm saying, no, I have a right to be myself, and saying that I, as my authentic sacred spirit being self, and as an Inanoiusko, I come with my own knowledge and my own traditional laws that I'm wanting to exercise and needing help to put that forward. Does it make me racist to say that I want to be an Inanoiusko without these racist policies such as kill the Indian and the child policy? You know, because that's what's happening now. People are calling us racist for saying, I want to be my authentic self. Like, it's so ludicrous what's happening, and I experience these racist, colonial, genocidal policies every single day, everywhere I go. And I'm a very assertive woman. I'm a very cerebral woman. I speak my language. I know my shit. I'm a pipe carrier. I'm very backboned. And I call people out. I'm not afraid to call people out and put them in their place, because it is high time that we did that. Like, this has to stop, you know. And it's just, and I don't care how old you are, it's time to grow up spiritually. And when you grow up spiritually, you don't do these things to people, because I sure as hell don't do it to other people, but I'm done with other people doing it to me. So emphasizing that traditional law, that I am the owner of my sacred stories. I'm a storyteller telling my sacred story. Nobody has the right to take my story, because that's, if I was in university, it would be understood as plagiarism. When you're citing the work of someone else in Western world, you're citing them, but for some reason they feel like they don't have to cite indigenous people, especially Turtle Islanders. We're seen as less than. You know, that you can continue the theft of land, you can continue the theft of even our identity. White women posing as Cree women and Mi'kmaq women and Anishinaabe women, like, you know, you've heard of the Mi'kmaq people, where they went and got those bogus cards and they're identifying as us when they're not us. But there's that kind of privilege going on where it's fraudulence. They're impersonating us, you know, and taking our songs, taking our poetry, taking our artwork. Like, you know, it's just, there is so much theft, it's even, appropriation even sounds soft, too lenient. I would go so far as saying, you know, high crime theft.
Okay, I'm gonna continue, but because of time. But maybe we can talk of this in the second part. So we can stay here until 8. So then whoever wants to stay, you can stay for that conversation. I'm gonna try to finish this one. Yeah. And we can have that conversation. I'm sure we can have. Okay, the categories. You know, like this is the equity seeking. Natalie. Equity seeking. What is the name?
Equity seeking groups.
Groups. Okay. Equity seeking groups is how. So.
Is that the 2008? You were talking. Somebody was talking about the 2008 handbook.
You know, the first time that this is the most recent version, the one that Alejandro has showed you. The city of Ottawa plus an organization that is called CAWI, City of All Women. I don't remember CAWI. What is the
City of Women Initiative? Isn't it? City.
Yes.
City. I used to be part of CAWI years ago.
Well, it's still active. So, in the city, in partnership with CAWI, has developed this equity and inclusion lens. In 2008 was the first version, and they have kept updating it.
Updating, yeah.
So
this is the last version.
This is the last version. This handbook includes 11 snapshots that talk about you know, these 11 equity-seeking groups that have been identified. You can show those.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna use the one of immigrants, the immigrant snapshot of the city today for talking about statistics.
Yeah.
It's good to have some statistics, so it looks like they trust me more. Okay, yeah. So I'm sure you're familiar with those equity-seeking groups.
The 11 equity-seeking groups.
Yeah. So sometimes, you know, they call it racialized people, or people before was people of color, and before of that was like black, yellows, olive reds, and all these colors. Really creative then. Youth, elder or seniors, immigrant, refugees, or newcomers, and there is difference between the two of them. Like, yeah, like an immigrant that has been more time here, maybe already knows how things function and has more possibility to access funding. Maybe newcomer is just landing and trying to understand what is going on here. So different conditions. LGBTQI2S, Indigenous or Métis unit or First Nations. And I put Indigenous and First Nations because in Latin America we call indigenous. So I keep calling them indigenous. So an immigrant can be an indigenous person, you know, and that's something that we need to acknowledge too. Like Edgar, Edgar is here. Edgar
Yeah,
left.
I'm here. He's here.
Yeah, like in your country, like people, what are the names of their culture? Like, do you think that indigenous people is part of the?
Well, I mean, in Central America, there is a lot of different groups, right? Not just in Guatemala, but I mean in Mexico, and Salvador, Honduras, and so on. I mean, there's so much, and each tribe, each village has their own language, has their own dialect, and they have their own crafts. So they work, but still, the communication. I mean, the way how they communicate, it's basically through Spanish if they want to, you know, to communicate more.
Yeah.
But I mean, they do understand like their own dialect. That's basically coming from the Mayas or the Aztecs, or you know, different.
Aymara.
Yes, different.
Okay, thank you.
Incas.
Okay.
Yeah, or Quechua. Yeah.
So can, you know, that I know that one of the work that we're trying to do now is like the meeting of the eagle and the condor, like, you know, the indigenous people of so-called North America and the indigenous people of so-called South America. But before it was ever the Americas, like, you know, we were the people of the eagles and the condor. So the coming together of that kind of indigenous is also different from because this is our continents, and it's not abroad like Africa or Europe or Asia. So it's a different understanding. Like with us, we are considered brothers and sisters because we migrated back and forth, we traded back and forth, and there's proof in that, there's history in that. Of course, the universities don't share that part, but anyhow, but indigenous knowledge-based systems knows this. So I think we also need to include in here that's a barrier in terms of how they understand brotherhood and sisterhood between our nations. I mean, this is why we're seeing all the BS and you know, from our brothers and sisters, like, you know, in so-called states, and calling them, what have that been calling them, aside from terrorists? You know, and they're saying that the people have, these immigrants have no place here, when it's like, hello, we've been migrating back and forth forever and trading forever. Like, how dare you even say that they're invading? You know, so in order to fight that stereotype and that discrimination, we need to speak up and revive the truth that we've always known, that we have always been the eagle and the condor people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Except I don't know how to say that.
No, I think it makes sense. Yeah. Okay, and with the intersectional identity of immigrants, I think I commented this before, but sometimes these categories that they create, they don't match our identities, and because we have intersectional identities, then we can fit in so many of these categories at the same time. So okay, yeah, like we can be racialized people, Caucasians, indigenous, First Nations, youth, adults, seniors, low income, high income, unemployed, partially employed, full-time employed, women, men, intersexual, heterosexual, homosexual, LGBTQI, academics, non-academics, professionals, etc. So, and what I mean here is like, as you know, when we talk about immigrants, it's a really general word that could mean so many things, and within us there are so many different people together. And we need to acknowledge that so we can work in finding similar goals to work together. We may have English or French as the first language, sometimes English and French are second or third language. Immigrant culture can be equal to Canadian culture or can be totally or partially different. This is one of the other in the big obstacles in the first, in one of the first slides that I show was the advocacy and dependency development projects. And there are projects coming from hierarchic institutions that implement development frames of dependency rather than community capacity building frames. So what I mean here is like development has a lot of theory too, and how development has a lot of theory. Like there are ways of doing development, and what I seen here in Ottawa, there is a lot of dependency frame. That basically there are institutions that they go to the community and they create a project that is temporary, that is not addressing the roots of the problems, and then that once they leave, everything falls down. So there is no sustainability. There is no capacity building. They are not giving skills to the community to actually become self-sustainable and having processes that are continuous. So then that's why we need to understand the difference between a dependency frame and a community capacity frame. And in that case, our project should be a community capacity frame. We should try to empower ourselves and understand the skills that we are lacking to be self-sustainable, to have achieve our goals as a continuous process. This is not, and one of the most important things that need to happen is that when this project ends, because there is a frame time for this project, is that we are going to continue working. We're going to continue applying for more grants. We're going to try to grow as a collective.
Alejandro, could I just jump back? I think this is a key point where critics of the term multiculturalism come in. It's exactly those examples you use where policies and procedures are short-term and they don't create a sustainable, ongoing project for the community. But governments, civic and provincial and federal, can say, here, we'll give you some money to do this, have a great show, and call us next year.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant earlier.
I might add in that there's a strategy that's happening, and to not remain naive about what the purpose of all of that would be. And certainly the indigenous communities have been dealing with that forever. Everything is temporary. Heaven forbid we have, a consistent full-time employment.
Oh yeah, it's blatant tokenism and piece you off, which
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that, and certainly the energy that's put into that process, and certainly one would be called paranoid, or you're just kind of whatever. It's really, really important to recognize that there are strategies, and it's on some level a question of whether we can collectively keep up with. And again, the indigenous, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit have been dealing with this forever. The Western-based systems of assimilation, and why can't you all just get along, and and then we'll give you something in return for that. And so, there is a strategy that's functioning and deliberate.
But also too, even when there is funding out there, like this whole notion of, oh my God, they have a word for it.
Determination?
Self-identifying, anybody can go now and say, well, I'm an Anishinaabe. Any one of you can go out there and say, I'm an Anishinaabe. I'm Innu, I'm Eo, I'm Haudenosaunee, and you get your funding. And self-declaring Indigenous person. And many of them are not like it's fraudulence. And there's nothing to check. Whereas, I'm not afraid to tell you, my father is George Laneboy of Chisasibi. My mother is Mary Lou Wabano, Ayatella Badawapskat. Basically, my whole family of James Bay. I can tell you where I come from, but these people, they can't. But yet they get the money. So by the time they give money to all these white people wannabes, there's no money left for us who are the legitimate Indigenous people. So that's something else that we need to bring up and talk about. Economic barrier. That's an economic barrier when you're lying about who you are.
Yeah.
and when you're lying about your nationhood and your indigenous knowledge, because indigenous knowledge keeper is a fluent language keeper. You can't even do ceremony, you can't even carry a pipe without language. You know, that's what I mean.
So that's like an identity theft.
A big time,
Yeah.
big time. So, you know, all this colonial policies that they're following, it's all those barriers. It's economic. I
Cultural,
list them
language,
all.
yeah.
All of it. Like what affects one part affects the whole. Make sense?
Yeah.
And there's one more thing for the economic barrier for an artist. Art is most of the time as a hobby. It's because if it's not commercialized, it doesn't worth money. So many of us have to do other jobs to carry on. Even when you're applying to be an immigrant, they ask you what is your profession, and if you say I'm an artist, so you need to show quantability, not the quality. How many paintings do you draw within a year? How many albums have you produced? You need to somehow show some kind of evidence to convince them. And it also relates to identity as well. We all have several identities, not one. But we are being forced to, one identity is usually the geographical identity. But as artists, it's our existential hunger for this interchangeability, the ambiguity between these concepts. This is what we are striving for. I think instead of categorizing ourselves, what I do when you come up to me and say, what kind of art do you like? I don't want to give it a name, because I don't do. It's not how I work. And you are somehow always being bombarded by questions to identify, to classify, which in turn ends to a commercializing your product. It turns into a product. It's not an art anymore. So these concepts is a little bit tricky for me, because I try to avoid them in my life, because I like this interchangeability. I can identify myself any of them and all of them at the same time. And for the language as well, we always downgrade language as a communication method, but languages also determine how we think. It brings us we carry the culture behind it. So most of the time, it's not about sharing a language. Is not only sharing what to do, not the basic tasks. It's also the way of thinking. When you look at the thinkers or academic people, they always benefited from this several languages at the same time. So just to keep in mind that even though we are aware of them, but I strongly think that I don't want to be categorized as any of them or all of them.
That's what makes you an artist.
I want to really say something about this. What is your name?
Jocelyn.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Jocelyn.
Jocelyn. So I understand what comes through is just your deep pain and hurt, but it's really uncomfortable sitting here as a white person, and then the way you were talking made me feel like, and this is a little bit this whole, like, because you had mother chose using terms, you know, or categories, you know, it's just weird, you know, in that sense, because of, unfortunately, I am white and German, but also at some point, you know, Germany, we were colonized. We used to be tribes, and we were invaded by the Romans. We had proud warriors. We lost our knowledge. The Celts still know. But I'm just saying, you know, at some point, all nations were indigenous. And I'm really sorry what happened, but it's just, there's a lot of power and knowledge, and it can also really alienate, and I just, you know, feel uncomfortable. I understand.
But I think it's
I know that's not what you.
Uncomfortable. It's time to be uncomfortable with what's
but there's
happened,
also certain
because
place.
it's been 526 years
I know, but
that we've been oppressed, and it is time. There should be pain by the immigrants for what has continued to happen. Because if anybody cares about the fact that it's my child I buried, my child that I buried.
Yeah.
You know, it's not your child, my child that I buried
What you
because
know
of
about my
racist, colonial,
child,
genocidal
or-
policies. It's my child that's brain injured because of colonial child welfare that is entrenched in racism, not your child. I have to go home to my son and I might find him having another seizure. That's my life.
That's
And
not what
I'm not gonna be here apologizing for speaking my Tabwewen. You know, I've sat in therapy, I've fasted for 4 days and 4 nights, I've sat in healing circles. Whatever's been available for me in terms of accessing healing is available for you. That I took my responsibilities, you can take your responsibilities, and I'm not apologizing for anything. Therapy is available for all of us, And we're adults, and it's time to grow up and be adults and be backboned. But I'm not apologizing for anything. I'm done with those days.
And you should. I totally
This
And I'm
is-
just gonna leave it at that.
Could I just say, this is a very big topic.
Exactly.
And it's part of something that I'm gonna present later.
Yeah.
And it's a world of learning on this topic. I
I agree, but I'm just saying.
I'm saying that it is a very large topic to discuss in this time frame. I would be glad to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah.
And there are upcoming events that deal with this issue that you might be interested in.
Which issue?
Idea of what some people call white fragility.
Yeah.
The
But
difficulty.
This is not what I was trying to talk
Well,
about.
I'm sorry.
That's
I
what it
I
is.
just-
I think
it's
if
white
I can
supremacy,
just one little
Yeah.
thing,
it's
like
white
that totally
entitlement,
exists,
white
but
privilege, and white fragility.
Let's wait 1 second.
Let's go on agenda.
Let's talk one by one so we can listen what we're saying.
Yeah.
So Claudia has
Exactly.
something to
I
say.
just wanted to say something very short.
Judge.
I think we can all talk, but I think it would be a moment and a place and a topic not
Yeah.
to take anything
Yeah.
personal.
Yeah.
And go through what we are
Are
here,
here,
to
yeah.
go through.
I think
because
that's
I
important.
understand both points, but it's not a point to be to take anything
Personal, yeah.
We're working together towards something, and we are just starting. So
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is what always happens, though. But this is how Indian residential schools came to be. It became law. This is how it came to be that our pipes were literally taken and our hair was cut. Our names were changed. It happens all the time. This kind of presentation that you just witnessed, that's my life every single day. I can't brush off my color of my skin. I'm not going to brush off the color of my skin. And so I didn't start it. I was speaking my Tabwewen about what are the barriers that I experience. And if it's going to become a problem that I can't even express the barriers that I encounter as an Inano Iwasquil,
But I agree that
then,
we can
like, you
express
know,
but not
like,
take anything personal. and
this
we can
is
go
where
exactly.
we need to take care of it.
Yeah, but I think
What-
I'm
what was
gonna try to move on because we have like 20 minutes more, and there are some people they want also to share their projects here. So I'm gonna try to finish the report, and then we can continue this conversation later. Whoever wants to stay, we can have the conversation. And it's an important conversation. I'm not saying that it's not important, but I'm gonna try to finish the report. Okay, the economic barriers, like when an immigrant moved here, sometimes, you know, they need to start a new life, they have no relative, no savings, little savings because currency exchange, no university degree validity, which is really important because basically when we study in our countries, like third world countries, then it's like we didn't study. You know, like when we come here, they don't value our titles or degrees. And this is important to acknowledge because that creates economic barriers. No, and I'm gonna show you a little bit of statistics. I love it. I love statistics, but in this time, so statistics on immigrant snapshot from the snapshot that Natalie was commenting. So this is the immigrant snapshot from the equity and inclusion lenses of the city of Ottawa 2016. So Ottawa received the highest share of immigrant with university degrees in Canada. 82% of immigrants in Ottawa have university degrees. And compared to the 67% of Canadian born population that have university degrees. So immigrants are more prepared, you know, like than Canadians. in numbers, not that there's in quality. No, like we have the same quality of education, but in numbers, there are more people with degrees in the immigrant population. Despite these skills, many have a harder time to find a job due to lack of recognition of credentials, education, and experience from overseas as assets. Racial bias views them as inferior to Canadian assets. Fair, consistent criteria to enable newcomers to re-enter their professions. Access or support to re-educate or retrain in Canada. Access to mentorship and networking opportunities. Cross-cultural competency and racial harassment in the workplace. Competency? Is there? Okay, whatever. Okay. Sorry for my English. You understand me. Access to professional development and advancement opportunities. Employer competency, or whatever, enriching, hiring, and developing immigrant workers. So we can here see some comparison on employment and overqualification. So in immigrants, 15.5% of unemployment compared to 6.5% of unemployment on non-immigrants. 16 of overqualification in employment, over 9% of overqualification in employment of non-immigrants. 24% of overqualification in employed women, comparing to 11% of overqualification in employed women of non-immigrants. And 29 of overqualification in women from 45 to 64, compared to 7.2% of overqualification in women from 45 to 64 of non-immigrants. So why is this important? It's because what you were commenting, we wanna be professional artists, but then we struggle in other jobs trying to survive, and then there is little time for practicing our professions, and the fact that we are immigrants affect us because of what just showed. There is a higher chance that we're going to be unemployed or having overqualifications, and then that means less income, and that means more struggling, less time for doing practicing our professional artistic practice. It is also harder for immigrants to find long-term stable work, and they are more often employed in short-term and less secure contracts. And that's really important. If their international credentials are not accepted, immigrants have to pay for retraining to work in their fields. About half of immigrants work in fields that are unrelated to their skills and abilities when they first arrive in Canada. If they succeed to being screened in, they face a significantly higher rate of overqualification than Canadian educated professionals. Many immigrants work 2 or more part-time jobs with substandard protection and frequent exploitation in order to meet the needs of their families. Women and single parents workers also experience added barriers due to the lack of affordable and culturally appropriate childcare or elder care. They also juggle to stress the migration and settlement in a new country, and this is what concerns us. Being a low-income immigrant artist reduces the possibility to practice our discipline because of the lack of time and resources. So it's important to acknowledge that, because when we're talking about equity, we're saying that we don't have, not everybody has the same chances. That's why we need to create policies that address that inequality by creating equity policies and not equality policies. And then this is the last part, because there were some opinions and things that were happening that were coming from the community that I didn't want it to change or organize. So I think it's important to also leave the comments of the community as they were too. So refugee conditions are worse because the lack of access to any social assistance like daycare and subsidies. Second generation of immigrants experience similar marginalization, cultural discrimination. Categories as a barrier because when applying for grants, you need to belong only to one. Lack of real data about statistics of immigrants in Ottawa. Worse for the case of immigrant artists. The theater community of Ottawa lacks diversity, has been left behind comparing to other cities like Toronto and Montreal. NAC 2 categories, English theater and French theater, have different levels of diversity. The French theater is more diverse in audience and production staff, and English theater lack of diversity in audience and production staff. Thus, immigrant theater artists who don't speak French experience marginalization as audience and staff.
There isn't like an indigenous theater now at the NAC?
Okay, that's good to know because
I think so, right?
Indigenous theater?
Started, yes.
And
Awesome.
how are they defining
Only last year.
indigenous? I don't know exactly, but as long as I know,
There's a new category for
there's a new space like for the indigenous.
Okay, that's good to know.
Maybe
Because sometimes even I don't fall into their definition. That's why I ask.
Yeah.
but just look at that.
Okay, I'm gonna look at and put it there too. Lack of consultation with the communities when creating cultural policies. What sorts of funding models should be the city using for the cultural activities, right? Which I think is a good question. Ethnic label first, discipline label first, both of them. Homogeneous Ottawa cultural scene. How to get rid of survival jobs and be a full-time artist. That was one of the questions, which is like I think the question that everybody has. Like, and we can start thinking on finding strategies to do that. Difficulty for emerging artists to access spaces and opportunities. The music problems. So we had a long discussion last time of music. So difficulty for accessing bigger audiences. Access to small local spaces granted, but access to big theaters or festivals denied. Impossibility to be part of the mainstream. Although there is intention of including world music and having more diverse programming at NAC, Meridian Theatre and Shenkman Art Center, programmers are not familiar with the world music. Blues Festival at Jazz Fest, no signs of interest in having world music, only commercial music and big names, out of reach of immigrant local musicians. Conflicts in the definition of concepts. So it's also what you were saying before, like what is the meaning of those words and how we define those concepts. So what is the meaning of emergent, established, immigrant, refugee, diversity, professional, art? And I'm sure there are more words, indigenous. Case of art festivals promoting diversity and not being diverse. So International Writers Festival didn't have a panel of Latin American writers. When being asked a reason, they argued that it was too expensive to bring them. Members of the coalition offered volunteering for organizing it. With Latin American writers living in Canada, the proposal was ignored. A member of our coalition was sitting in a jury committee for a theater award. Stakeholders didn't give an award to an immigrant play because they didn't consider it art or a complete piece of art. Not winning the award implied nobody will see the play. Low demand by audiences and lack of data. How many people goes to watch a movie? How many people goes to watch a play, an exhibition, a concert? That data is missing. Or maybe it's there, but it hasn't been shared. Solutions. So this is what I want to talk about today. So I'm gonna just ask you one question. Is like, well, there are 4 questions, but they are simple. One is what is your discipline? The second question is like, what are the obstacles that you have found for accessing your goals, to achieving your goals, and what are the solutions that you find for achieving those goals and overcoming those obstacles that you found in your practice. And the solutions that they gave us last time with the people that was here was creating mentorship programs where an established artist can mentor an emerging artist. And I think that was, that idea is awesome. I think we should try to do that too. Hiring immigrant art administrators in full-time positions. And that's also important, it's always we end up doing volunteering or or part-times, and we're the talkings, but we're never full-time. Being included in the decision-making processes, policy-making, juries, committees, etc. Increasing participation and visibility. Need of decolonization of knowledge at individual, institutional, and societal level. So that means, we need to decolonize our minds, but also decolonize institutions and decolonize ourselves as a society together. Encourage more art programs for children, which I need to ask that person more information because maybe I didn't understand what she means with that. Commitment in educating audiences. Individual level of responsibility, and that's something else that was brought out. It's institutions, they have a responsibility, but we as artists, individual, we have a responsibility to try to achieve those goals and overcome them. So keep applying, requesting feedback before and after applying, continue gaining skills, commitment in educating audiences, accessing the media to promote our art shows, support from the community as a community level, creation of a network. So, and I'm gonna end here. the creation of a network is one of the main goals of these meetings. You know, like it's important that we know each other, that we know what is happening in the community. If there are some opportunities that we could access or people want to share, then we can do it here. And also we have the Facebook group.
Because everybody has a different experience.
Yeah. So I think maybe we can have like a 5-minute break and then we answer the questions, or do you want to answer the questions now before the break? Break? Like 5 minutes break, yeah. Yeah.
Little break, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Oh, it's your time.
It's actually it's a part of my culture, but in the same time, I saw my mom, you know, like always she do that because it's a part of our culture to wear. The women there, they always wear these. Here I have, you know, like one picture. I don't know, but when I saw that, I think I can, you know, like do something different with it. So I start in the beginning. My mom, she, you know, always complain about the colors I choose, how I start, you know, like because she has, you know, like her idea, like no, she has, you know, this dress. It has in her in the front and in the certain way, but I said, you know what? I cannot change all that. I will not follow your rules. It's beautiful, and I wanna show this beautiful thing in, you know, like another way. So it's something I can use it every day and everywhere, and something it's I can wear it, you know, like in the morning and yeah, it's I choose.
Can you wear it?
Yeah, sure.
Can you wear it?
Oh,
Your
yeah.
stuff, so we can see it.
Maybe I get too wide. Because that's what always I said. It's not getting small. You.
Wow.
A little bit wider. Just with
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It is
Wow, you should
gorgeous.
wear it always.
How many people want to see Justin Trudeau wearing that?
Yes, sure. And with the socks.
Yeah.
With the socks.
Also,
He's got the socks.
this one, you know, like I choose everything, the color, the design, and even
Oh, beautiful.
design.
Wow.
I see them too.
Yeah.
Oh, the other side is beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's all. And how long does it take to make?
Oh.
It depends because before when I start to do this, I don't have, you know, like you know, work, and so most of the time, you know, I'm at home. But now because I have, you know, like actually I'm working full-time job with Immigrant Women's Services Ottawa, but still, you know, when I come back to my home, I like to do this. I feel like it's, you know, like.
And do you sell these? Do you sell it or?
No, because I don't think, you know, not everybody appreciate that or understand, you know, the value of this. But actually, I did a lot to, I give it to, I use it as a, for my friend, I give it as a gift. It's very, very nice. This is also, you know, like, the whole thing, it's my design, and I made this. Yeah. Even the,
You can wear it.
yes.
You knitted that part?
Yeah.
In the top. Where is it?
Such intricate
Oh,
work.
yes. Yeah. No, my daughter loves intricate. I love this. It's so beautiful.
And I think those are the colors of the Palestinian flag also.
Yes.
I have the same dress. My daughter, she wear it. One day I was wear the same dress. I have this dress because I made everything, like I shoot the color and we had, like big fight with my mom about the colors.
Wrong color.
She doesn't care. Wrong color. I want to do that.
You're going to finish this chocolate.
Wow.
That's it. I have another thing.
Bravo.
Moving on. Can I try the vest before you put it away?
And
This one is because I'm
Petra,
the best.
would you like to share your salon?
Sure, yeah.
I'm always about vests.
Yeah, so we are the seniors. No, we don't have the so we're the seniors and we're black.
But then I always like.
Petra is gonna talk.
Sorry.
Yeah, you can.
But nice, yeah, because they're very light.
Yeah.
Oops. Just, it's like floating away. Woo. And the other one has more weight, and it's heavier. This one.
So we just wanted to say that since 2006, we have been doing some programming in our house. Yeah, it came actually started out of a bit of frustration because we found that, and this has nothing to do with whether newcomers or anybody, but it's just open for everyone. It started because I could see that there's so many people out there with lots of talent, and for one reason or another, I could give you a whole lot of reasons, as Alexandra also has done. We're barely noticed, and I think I'm a visual artist, and definitely part of making things for me is sharing it with other people. And I just thought there's a lot of talent locally, so we are really focused on the local, but we don't just want to do navel gazing, so we are very focused on what's going on out there, but from a local point of view. That's sort of what we're doing. It's very open, and we have very few obligations because it's all run without any money, and so we are not really obligated to write any final reports or anything like that, which gives you a lot of freedom, but it is also it's really a very privileged thing, and so this is why because we can afford it, right? I mean, we're old and we have space in our house that we can use for this sort of thing. So, I just wanted to say that it's open to anyone. I have a list of 340 people now. We communicate mostly by email. And what we do, we started out with salons, and that's still going strong. And it's actually about the salons that I wanted to talk mostly. We also did quite a lot of exhibitions, but I'm not so sure how much of that will we continue with. So, but the salons are going strong for sure. And we always invite people who have done something outside of Ottawa and have been in a residency or have had a show outside, and then we don't know about it, and they can come and talk to us about it and give a presentation. Also, though, and that's important for this group, because we would also like to hear from people who are quite recent immigrants, and then they're just trying to find their bearings in this city, and to talk about what you're doing as an artist. And I have invited Alejandro, and he is going to do a salon at our place in March, right?
Yeah.
We haven't set a date yet, but
yeah.
I'd like to communicate that with you. Also, I'd like to know if there's anyone else interested in doing that, because we always love to hear about newcomers. I don't know. There's several people here who have been regular visitors to our place. So I don't know if you want to add something, but
well,
I don't know.
I've gone to several things, and I kind of I'm one of those late, an old emerging artist, and I have to say that being able to go to Petra and René's and listen to people talk about their different experiences made me feel quite hopeful about the many, many paths that people come to things by. So it's always interesting. People always have some people are surprising, and so there's always something to learn and to be inspired by, and it's a great informal sharing.
It's difficult though to get that equity going in terms of diversity, I should say, because we are what we are, and our networks only go that far. We have quite a few immigrant artists actually on our list, fewer younger people, and it's again it's who you know, right? And there is that generation gap, and it's definitely something that really bugs me, but I don't really know what to do about it. It does make you feel as an older person, sort of like isolated, and it has nothing to do with physical needs. It's just I really like to communicate with younger people, but it's how do you do it? We have had quite a few younger people do a presentation, for instance, but they very seldom come back regularly. And I can also understand that because they have a lot of other things to do, like bringing up a family and finding work and working. So I can understand it, but it's just something that I would love to see happening a little bit more. Like I just love to see that intergenerational communication, because I think there are a lot of people in the group who are older and have really interesting stories to tell, and they're just not being heard by younger people. I think it's a shame. So if you're interested, there's a lot of stuff. It's been 12 years now, and there's a lot of stuff on the website that I keep up religiously. So if you want to check it out, I have cards with my website on. That's all.
Could I just add something? Because Petra and René, they're so generous. It's such a wonderful place to go to. The people that arrive there, like I am new to this, and it's just been so exciting. I've met so many interesting people, heard so many interesting points of view about art, society. Opportunities come up for networking. I met Alejandro at such a meeting, and we are now going to be working on a project together, and that's one reason I'm here tonight. So it's just such a civilized, intellectual, friendly place to share ideas about art. It's just wonderful.
And I would like to say we'd like to get more people from different disciplines. We have some poets, that's about it. But I'm very hesitant because it's all for free, and I really do believe that artists should be paid for what they're doing. So, but like you said, it's basically like a professional development, sort of but I don't know that many people from other artist communities. Like I don't know musicians or so. I would never ask them to do something for free in my house, because that's just not the way it works. We'll do it for our own community of visual artists, and of course everyone can always say no too. But I am a little bit torn about asking people to do things for free, especially younger people. So, but if you're interested, and you can just come and listen to Alejandro. I'm looking forward to it.
And I just wanted to add to this conversation, because these two people certainly are setting I want to come back to civilized in a moment. But these two people are not only generous, but really are setting kind of a model in some ways for all of us. Those of us that have privilege and have homes that we can have access to. It's a really wonderful model to be looking at in terms of what about, you know, if we got away from galleries and we got away from museums and we got away from, but we actually expressed ourselves in the spaces that we're in versus the ones that we need to apparently spend an incredible amount of money to get. And all I'm saying is that most of us have shelter. We have some kind of space that, and some of those spaces can be more generous than others. In other words, big families or families that have to take care of their children, but my point is that the model of being able to, and I'm going to go back to First Nations, Métis and Inuit, because they've been doing this forever, right? Which is community is based on people supporting each other and recognizing the need that we have in communities to support each other. And there's many, many ways of doing that. And money doesn't have to be one of the reasons why we can or cannot support each other. I mean, I think that what you've done to open up your space, and certainly we've had these conversations of decolonized arts, and thank you for opening up the door and letting me come in and all the rest of us come in from the community and look at those issues around truth and reconciliation, recommendations, and how the Canada Council needs to step up to the plate and start recognizing. And so it's through you opening the door that we've been able to sit together now, 4 sessions,
Yeah.
almost 3 or 4 sessions, and it's always full. And it's really interesting.
It doesn't just always stay at our house though, because we have been collaborating
Yes,
with other
that's right.
spaces if we need more space.
Yeah.
We have been working
With Gallery
Carmel
101.
in Gallery 101.
Yeah.
We sometimes move to the Enriched Bread Artist if we needed more space.
Yeah.
We've also worked together with Ottawa Art Gallery about some programming. So, and I think that's the kind of thing that I would like to see happen. I also would like to, like you said, you know, there might be other people, mostly older ones like us, who have a bigger house and kids gone, and you know, there's a space, because that's actually how it happened. You know, okay, I can do this. Why not?
Right. Exactly, but I don't think people realize that we can use our spaces.
Because spaces
in
is
better
actually
ways
a
than
really big sticking point, I think.
Yeah.
Spaces, actual spaces, are really important, and Ottawa does not seem to. It doesn't have the kind of spaces that artists usually, you know, take to, because it's old, it doesn't cost much, and you can use it, and then. But it's always like if it's all tear down and build another condo tower. So.
Right.
You know, we can protest that, but we can also, you know, see if there are other spaces that maybe can use them that don't cost anything, like other people's houses.
And talking about spaces, Carmel, you have also
Yes,
some
and it's
information
interesting
to
on
share
the
with us?
tail end of what we're talking about, which is I just got a studio space, and I've wanted this all my life, you know, just a space that I could be in. I don't, what I could afford, because I couldn't afford very much, but I have this small space that I'm very happy to share with those that find themselves needing somewhere where I can type a letter, you know, and I need to send an email, but I wanted to share that space, and the building that I'm in is a heritage building, and talk about condos moving in, which is the idea with this particular building. It has a gallery downstairs. It's about the length of here, probably, Alejandro? And then it's got, you know, windows. It's very bright. It's in an old building, an old house, and there's 5 artists on the 2nd floor and 4 artists on the other floor, and so my thing is, and it has a big kitchen. So the kitchen's lovely because we could have a feast. You know what I mean? Food is really significant when we're creating movements. You got to have food, and you know, people have to eat. And so that's really important, and that food can be used on some levels also to have people in the community to contribute what they can, you know, and some can afford more than others. And I'm talking about, you know, put your money where your whatever is, you know, and we start sharing our food and start understanding what that means in the bigger picture of things and how we can support each other. So that space is like, there's no paintings on the walls, eh? So the Ontario Arts Association group, I think, consists of 60 or some odd people who want to go in and schedule putting up artwork there every single month, right? And I'm going, well, I haven't even started yet. Like, I mean, you know, the guy's like, well, you can pencil in a date, and I'm like, okay. And so I brought it here because I want, if people can think about how can we collectively come together and take up that space. Take up that wall, take up those, you know, yes, they're renting it out for $100 a week to put your artwork on the walls. Now, I know that galleries and everywhere else are charging sometimes over 50% in
That's nothing. $100 a week is a good deal.
is a good deal. So being, yes, so my point is that, you know, I didn't realize that that was cheap. Because I'm thinking, well, just how about loaning the wall out? Like, you know, but people have to keep a building going. So the thing is corporations want to take over this building. And so the guy at a Min looks at me and goes, well, if you have an artist collective and they can come up with, you know, being able to buy this building, then we could get rid of the people who want to put condos. I mean, the community are fighting right now. They're looking at probably still having the building for another 6 months. But my point is we could do some serious work
Can I ask
in that
where's
space.
Where is it?
Okay, so it's at 255 McKay Street, which is just at the beginning of Beechwood. It's called the Nectar Community Center, and they were tied up with the church, and then they bought this building from the church, and then the church bought it. It's just unbelievable back and forth, right, of what's happened. But these places to me are sacred spaces for artists and community. Because they have a large space and then a large kitchen that you have access to. Kitchens are really important, right? And so I just saw the potential in this building. And Alejandro came over and we looked at it and I think it would be really something if we kind of went, hey, why don't we just set a date, get it penciled in, and then go, okay, we'll decide it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have an exhibition?
Yeah.
It could be an exhibition. We could, and they rent the space out, the floor space for house, you know, almost like house concerts or music or drumming or workshops and that's $35 an hour. They're renting that out, right? But if there's enough people who are supporting that project, it becomes very cheap, right? So I'm just simply saying that if we wanted a space where we could demonstrate on some level the actions that we're trying to take. Because that certainly needs to be out there and recognized, then it's one space that happens to be around that we can take advantage of.
Pay the money to
who is the
somebody
owner?
paying $100 a week to somebody. Who is that?
Well, there's this guy, you know, like it's pretty laissez-faire down there, but so they have an administrator they hire for 2 half days.
They is
Nectar Community Center, right? So, and I didn't know this place existed, but I just said to him, I said, so what do we got to do if we want to, and I mentioned this group, right, the coalition, and he said, just give me a date and I'll pencil it in so that the Ontario or the Ottawa Arts Association, which consists of more than 60 people, don't take up the space every single week for the next whatever. Because they have 60 members, so imagine it costs them pretty much nothing to put it on the wall for a month. You know, well, I mean, it costs them, but...
Let's do it in May.
Well, it's really ironic because I penciled in May, from May 11th until the 18th, 1 week. And I did it of my own accord thinking,
just
do it.
What? Just do it.
Yeah.
May sounds good.
Let's go.
So
May, 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
And I can get that too. I told him that after we talked, then yes, we can do it for as long as we want.
Okay.
And I think that it would be good to I've nailed that week down, but I can add another week.
Yeah, that would be good.
If we want.
Do you remember, okay, I have 2 questions. Is it by the old Crichton School?
Yes,
My daughter used to go there.
There you go.
It's a house. It's a beautiful house, old
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
and the gallery space is beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Get 2 weeks for sure. Let's do something.
weeks,
Let's
yeah.
organize a march too.
In fact, that's why when you said
Let's have a
it's like
happening.
a
Let's
month
have-
or so, I'm just saying because by the time you figure out 1 week or 2 weeks, it's just that that time will be gone. So as soon as you turn, it's like, oh, if I had pre-booked that, it would be. But if you could, I mean, I don't know what to say if the time in April's all booked or something. But if you can just think about 4 weeks at least, because that way it becomes a week here, week there, week there. It's easier to, and that shows a bigger commitment.
Sure, I'd love to pencil it in for quite a few times. You know what I mean, like the next 6 months. But but the issue is, I'm the person that will be responsible for nailing that down. Then it goes from the pencil to the pocket, so to speak, right? So the thing is that we'd all have to commit on some level that I'm going to put my $40 in, and I'm going to put in 3 paintings, or I'm going to go and do a drum workshop, or I'm going to, you know, anything that we can do to occupy that space, right? And decolonize the community center. Right? But so at the moment I have a week. So
I think May
another week.
sounds
May is
really
great.
good.
all
2
of May
weeks.
or
No,
2
maybe
weeks
2
of
weeks.
May.
It's
So
also
we make it
May Day.
real.
May Day is like an
Put
action
up a
thing.
piece.
May Day.
No, but May Day, too many things are happening at the same time. So in May Day, there are too many things
Oh
happening
no,
at
but
the
what I
same
mean
time.
is May is a good month for action.
Okay, yeah.
Oh
For
yeah.
activism.
So I'll just book an extra week after the 18th,
After,
so
yeah.
that it brings us into 2 weeks, and we can
And we can
create
start
whatever
organizing.
and we'll discuss how to organize all that.
And Sarah
maybe,
can show her work there too.
maybe at the
Yeah.
moment.
Show your work.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
So the
Beautiful.
other question I had was, do you remember the Stone Angel?
Yeah.
It used to be on Lisbon there,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it used to be like there was artwork. One of my friends, Jane Mundy, actually had an exhibit, a traveling exhibit. It was like there were photos here on this side of
Right.
children who had men who had been to Izmir Residential School as children, and then on the other side she showed them as they were today. You know, it was a beautiful exhibit. But anyhow, so you'd have musicians at the front, and then we had tables with candles, and they would be selling, you know, pierogies, brownies, date squares, like whoever wanted to. So it was an art exhibition. It was a crafters over here. It was musicians. It was a genre of everything.
That's a good mix of,
A good mix.
and that's what hopefully we could do in this space is have that representation.
Karma, that's one of the most valuable resources that is needed, that you've nailed. So
We
when I
need
think
one of those in the 4 directions in this city. That's all
no,
I'm
it's.
saying.
I'm just saying, it's great, and you've got responsibility on your shoulder now. So some people here, I think, will
I
have.
can come up with the cash for that.
Yeah, but still,
I'll go play.
you gotta.
So
But what about in terms of curating it and that? You guys are gonna get it all together and put a call out. You're on top of everything.
So just know that, you know, I think you had Alejandro had a thing about what our responsibilities are. And remember that.
Okay,
That
so
we all have a responsibility to.
Yeah, no, we can do it. We can.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah, let me know how I can
ensure
help.
that, like, let's say for instance, for those who do beadwork and who want to showcase beadwork, how do we ensure it doesn't walk out?
Well, that's going to be the other issue, right? Which is there's being a community center and then
Someone
not
needs to
having
sit
any
there,
money.
yeah.
It's like, oh well, you
Yes,
know,
it's
in
a
there now and
collective.
that's it,
Yeah.
right?
It's a collective. It's a co-op.
I
so
think
people have
maybe
to-
we could look
People have
at
to
display
manage, they have to stay
cases
there.
that are locked, or you know what I mean. That like I don't know. We could look at. Some people might have ideas about that stuff. So what we do is put a call out to people and say, okay, people who know that work, what's the safest way to secure it? Or maybe we could. We'll figure it out.
And who's gonna be there while
We'll
it's
go on
open?
watch, right?
Watching
All of
like-
us are on
yeah,
watch.
you gotta have people around, like,
Yes,
during
exactly.
opening hours, everyone signs up.
Yeah, when I was in university, we used to do the collective exhibitions, and then we have sitting hours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
opening hours, and
Yeah.
then we do schedule, and then every
Yeah.
person can go 3 hours, and then next one comes
Yeah.
3 hours, and then
Yeah.
we cover like
Yeah,
every
the whole
afternoon,
time.
Yeah.
and the rest of the time is closed.
Well, when you consider that there might be 20 of us or however many,
Yeah.
right? Everybody took a couple of hours. You'd want to be talking about your own work.
Yeah, and it's
You know
really
what I mean?
nice to
Like
see
be there and
the-
have
yeah,
people come in.
I'd be there.
So we'd have an opening and we'd do all that, you know. But maybe in the middle of
Concerts,
it.
workshops.
I can't wait.
Fantastic.
It'll be great.
Okay, and we have one last person that's
Yes.
sure.
Okay.
Don't go, please.
Well, if you guys all want to leave now,
Wait,
go quick, because I'm going to start talking.
I need like 2 minutes or something, but if you're
2 minutes?
Yeah, but
Or-
he's
or
going,
you
he's going, and then
Oh,
yeah, you were gonna short.
Yes, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And it involves what she's talking about.
Oh, it involves what she's talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, it involves what you're talking about.
So how are we gonna do this?
2 minutes, go.
I could just,
Don't-
I could
just
go.
go.
Because, okay, I'm here from, came in a time machine. I've been out of Canada for 20 years. I came back and found, like, I'm looking for the time machine, but like, I found out that Biff is president now. And I'm sorry, I'm just telling you this joke because I really have lived outside Ottawa for 20 years. But I came from the Saul Gallery from 30 years ago. So I was around from 80. I'm an immigrant from the U.S. I escaped from, you know, the political situation down there as a university student, came up to Ottawa in '88, worked with Saul Gallery Collective, and basically scraped out the basement and turned it into Saul Gallery and the Video Co-op in between 87, 89, those years of mud and concrete and shit that was down there. And then I've always done contract work. I'm a communication, documentary film person. So I co-founded the One World Film Festival, which is what you hear. This is the 30th year, and the reason I'm mentioning is because I've just come back in the past year to discover it's still going 30th year for the One World Film Festival documentary, but it's also One World Arts is the umbrella organization which is all the arts. So we are all. It's about art and artists collective and education. So to me, I come from the artist collective consciousness, which is how do you get a bunch of people together, and artist run centers have been and always will be this sort of people getting together and just kind of let's do something. It's not about having a big fancy space like the OAG, okay, because the OAG is interesting, and I was just at the cultural summit there, but when I did an all-day thing with them, they wouldn't even give me the names of people who were there that day. I literally sat all day and gave them information, and we worked like dogs trying to answer all their questions, and they sucked all the information up, and then I said, can we just know everybody who was here, just the name? And they said no. And it was like 100 people attended.
Strategy.
And I know like 5 or 10 of them from the past, because I'm from the past. I'm from like 30 years ago. So I came back thinking, I'm going to get to see people, and I see a few people I know, and I see new people, and I want to know who's here. So I'm all about like art resistance, art activism, art being a good artist collective. I come from the good old days. So like think about me as like coming from the past. Like 30 years ago, my brain is like 80s brain. And then like I've been out of the country, so I kind of come back and I see things with a different point of view, but I still see all the opportunity. So doing like being a collective and getting into a space and having resistance and just saying we're here, you know, we're present, we're here, and we're here to stay, and we're not going away, and you got to listen to us, and in a way the talking stick, I don't know if it's okay for me to mention this, but using the talking stick in a meeting is quite good because everybody has good things to say, but it's like we have to say, I want to say something, and I'm not saying it well right now. I'm just coming at the last minute here with some pieces of paper about One World Arts and saying who we are, but I just want to be involved with like the new consciousness and collective of real artists who are not like controlled by, you know, the powers that be. Like I am so sick of like, I don't mind bridge building, but it's kowtowing to all that, to the space. Like if I get 5 minutes worth of their space, I got to pay $500. I mean, yeah. I'm about to sign a piece of paper on Monday to give us a chance to show documentary film October 19th in the OAG, and I could rent a luxury condo for like 2 months for what I'm paying for like 6 hours in a theater. Like the Ottawa City has built for us to use. The cost is $1,900 for 6 hours for a nonprofit group to show films. 6 hours.
Talk about a barrier.
That's a non-profit price.
Yeah.
So like so I've got to fundraise like crazy, and it's our 30th year, and I'm like a piece of history because like 30 years is a long
But
time.
what are you saying to us?
Well, I'm
So what
saying
do you-
coming here, and what I also wanted to do with this is our program from the 29th to the 30th year this year is One World Arts has been in the past an all artist all art consciousness and collective. It hasn't been. The film festival was about raising money for the other thing. Like the film festival was supposed to bring money back for the art, okay, for art outreach and artists and art education. And then it just sort of went the other way. And now the film festival takes over, and everything is all about the film festival running, which is documentary film, which is an art medium. But I still believe that what happened to the arts? What happened to One World Arts?
I guess we're here to answer that question.
Right. So I'm here to say, like, well, we have this legacy, and I just applied to the city for money as usual. You kill yourself for those grants, and for a meager amount of money. But I said, really, it's access to space. It's really space is the big thing. Access to space, which is more than one. Well, a week is good. 2 weeks is better. And then anything that gives you a chance to come back, because once the door shuts, they say, sorry, that's all going to be somebody else's space now. The investment in time and people and money is right here. It seems like if you have 30 people, 20 people, 30 people, whatever you have, but that's a good number, because like 5 is not good. Like if you have numbers going for a space, I can help with the paperwork, and I would put the One World Arts behind that and say, we are a 30-year organization. We are celebrating our 30th year. We are here to be part of this community. So going to the city, going to Ontario Arts Council and Canada Council, I can put in, for that money, and just say, hey, this is what
there's some networking right there.
Right, right. I'm saying it's like we have credibility, which kind of has been lost in the waves of time, but now I've just come back to the past year and it's like, hey, like let's get back to like the art that we originally started out, like Saul Gallery was that, and it still is, but it's in construction now. So if anybody knows anything about Saul Gallery, it is an
Saw's ready to go, right?
Right, but not
but
yet.
It's another.
It's going to be another high-end piece of real estate.
Yeah. Well, they just announced they want to be the greatest in the world. So.
Well, I know. I didn't know this about the big screen and it's.
I'm sorry, could I interrupt
at this point?
we're
done. Now, because
I think there's a lot more to learn about Saw Gallery.
I have pieces of paper, but it's just the idea
I love
of
to talk
what
to
it
you.
is.
And we should bring this
Yeah. All right.
Great, that's for that.
So that's part of people. Okay, wait. Oh, wait. This is actually better because that tells more about the arts part. Okay. I don't need anything else if you want. You don't have to do that. I can do that. Thank you.
Could you help me with that?
Yes.
I could do that. I don't like to say.
Okay, guys, last presentation. You can do it. You can do it.
Now, guys, I hope you're not too tired. I hope I'm going to be clear, and I'll try to be short. I know, I love my coffee too. Guys, if you need a coffee, get it. Just pound
You just keep going, and we'll.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Oh, are you ready? Okay.
After the summit.
Guys, here we are.
Let's go.
I'm presenting you this idea for the Off-White Project. It's an investigation of white privilege in our society and in the art institutions. Okay? Next slide, please. Well, since you're immigrants to this country, as am I, here I welcome you with an image that I created. It's called White Totem 150. It's my impression of our flag for the sesquicentennial that happened a while ago. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, what is the Off-White Project? It's a multidisciplinary artistic investigation of white privilege from the inside and the outside. It uses elements of exhibition and performance. It uses a digital platform for learning and feedback. And it develops social engagement and local ownership. Now, I'll just pause at this point to say it was through the beautiful RIA sessions and discussion groups that I happened to meet Alejandro. Now, why am I here tonight? partly because I know him personally, partly because we share some beliefs in certain approaches to art. And I think that we saw that there was some overlap with the project I've been working on for about 2 years, and it's starting to really take shape now, and this Multicultural Arts Coalition. So I think we could talk just initially that this project is an independent partner of the Multicultural Arts Coalition. We share some ideas, we will share some people and resources at times, but we share philosophies, but we each have separate missions that are supportive of each other.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. So next slide, please. Okay, who is the Off-White Group? It's an ad hoc, multidisciplinary artist group. Currently, there are members in Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto. Many others are interested. It's a growing group. It is meant to grow. It is not meant to be owned by one small group of people. It is meant to be more like a movement. White, quote, and non-white, quote, artists are involved in learning, dialogue, and artistic expression. Artists wanting to collaborate, network, and engage with different local communities are the kind of people we would like to work with. Next slide, please. When and where? The first show, I have a solo show at the Shankman Center, June 22nd to July 16th. That's in Orleans. It's a beautiful facility, which is also a great facility for MAC, for performance art, visual art, dance studios, music, theater, stage, everything. So I'm calling this the Off-White Project Prelude. Since it's only a solo show, I will present my work and promote the group project. And the plan is that other shows will follow in different locations with different teams of local artists and art students. So I hope that this initial show can be a launch and a generator and amplifier to create other shows that other people will own and take over. Okay, next slide, please. Why this project now? We believe that art must stand up and speak to humanity. This show is a response to attitudes and events occurring today, all around the world, in our hometowns, in ourselves, in our local communities, and globally. It is also a response to the system of art and aesthetics in commercial galleries and that art schools teach. I lost a word. The way we were taught about art and the way art is commodified has a lot of problems in terms of white privilege. We see many barriers in the art world based on biases of white privilege. These biases are systemic, inherent, and invisible to some people who are privileged by their positions. These barriers exclude many others. How art is defined can limit the discourse that art can have, how it is disseminated, and who can be seen as valid authors of art. That can perpetuate a bias of the dominant culture and class. This is kind of like the principles of the manifesto or mission of this project. Next slide, please. This project creates a safe space for dialogue on race. We believe that art can open up an emotional and intellectual door into the individual and help lead us towards learning, collaboration, change, and action. We see the need for people in dominant positions in society and art to listen to the other, to self-reflect, and learn what may have been blind to them their whole life. This self-reflection is something I could comment on personally in terms of the learning that I've done involved in this project, and maybe later I'll talk about my background in terms of why did I come to this crazy white guy. I'm very white, but I admit it. And I want to reflect and learn more.
Yeah.
Our group collaboration has already increased our awareness and has led to us to begin these art actions.
Yes.
Okay, next slide, please. How can we approach our goals? Well, let's look at the structure of the Off-White Project. It is a series of shows It is open to all forms of art practice. We create art pieces that will challenge the artists and audience members to reflect on white privilege. And key to this is the challenge of the participating artists when they are creating work. The people that I've already approached and who've been involved in the beginning of this project, we have shared readings and resources on critical race theory, on white privilege, on different authors and different academics. Short readings, sometimes a video on YouTube by an established author, so it's easy to digest and not too academic. We hope to, and we've learned from those resources, and we've learned from dialogue with each other and sharing our backgrounds. So we see this as a positive with self-reflection. Okay, next slide please. I'll come back to that later at the end. Okay, components of the show, what it includes? Well, exhibition and performance art, visual art. I would love to see expressive dance on this theme. Music, poetry. I do a bit of protest poetry because I found visual art to be limiting in what I could say and extremely challenging. And I'll show you at the end what I mean by that. So, also key to this is a digital platform. We already have been gathering online resources on white privilege, and we share these. I have been creating prototypes to create digital links for audio and video and digital platforms so that I could link exhibited art through QR codes that you scan with your smartphone. It'll link you to the web so you can get to YouTube. You can get to audio or video or other web-based resources that artists can create for this. And we also intend to use some social media connections, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so that we can bring the exhibition outside of the gallery and bring the outside in. Key to this digital platform is the idea that people outside will be able to see these exhibitions like a virtual show when we archive them. But also key to challenging the artists in their own whiteness is that they will now finally have a feedback, people commenting and critiquing their work. You know how you have a little guest book at a painting exhibition and people sign it and nobody else ever sees it? We'll have an online one. People can comment and people can see each other's comments. And if it's all based on this theme, I think it could create very interesting dialogue and even some friction. But remember, without friction, there's no traction.
That's right.
Okay. Also, there will be other components of the show to create social engagement. I have mocked up a sort of tongue-in-cheek whiteness survey. We intend to interview artists and audience members. Hopefully, people will agree to have at least an audio interview. And I'm really big on audio, podcasts, because I think they're very penetrating when you hear someone's voice. I find it more intimate than even a video interview. Okay? We will also create an open call during the show. If we put on a show, our little group, who are we to be the masters of anything? We will come and bring a bunch of tools with us. We'll come to a location, and in that location, we hope to target people like university students and local artists. We'll invite them to an open call during the show. So come on. And we'll have a conference session with them. And say, if they are willing, we will give them all the tools we have so that they can set up their own next show in that location, where they know their own communities and people better than we could ever know. And we just ask them, when you do it, please do it. Put your stuff online and link back to us so we can grow a network of learning and engagement. This is what I dream to see. Next slide, please. Now, that's sort of saying goodbye at the end of the main show. I have a couple of images of some of my work. There you see this strange representation of the flag. There's some layers to it. The next slide, please. I said I wanted to challenge artists. So you'll see at the very end I have the original call statement. What I said, I put it out to white artists, quote white artists. I wanted them to reflect on their own white privilege without appropriating any other culture's symbols or ideas or images. So that's why I had the flag. You know, is there blood on that flag? I don't know.
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you. Here's an image I call
interactive.
Right on. I need the feedback. And this image I call color theory.
Yeah.
So how am I gonna paint my own whiteness? Well, okay, I get abstract here. I say color theory. You know, the first painting lesson you ever do is like a color wheel, and you do your primaries, your secondaries, your tertiaries.
Yeah.
Well, these are all skin tones. There's no pure white. There's no pure black. But notice there's a dominance of white at the top, the most restful area, and the largest piece area. Then, as you go down, it's darker, more fractionated, more energized, and less peaceful. Yes?
Remember Western-based, that's Western-based teaching, right? Skin tone.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
It's
There
a
you go.
fascinating thing to, you know, that whole area alone.
Yeah.
Can
And what is the
open up,
skin
like,
tone?
volumes.
What is that?
With the skin
Yeah.
tones.
Well, I'll tell you later where I grew up and a few people I met, skin tone, what did that mean when a couple of individuals I know. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, well, here's a very different one. Ria and Petra and Renee just recently had, well, on New Year's Day, they invited some of us from this crazy art salon to create some works in their Dada show for the new year. So I had to put something together real fast. So this is called American Gothic 2019. Okay, and it's actually a really cool piece. It's like oil pastel on acetate, and it's I don't know. Is that pig judging you? Who will that pig allow into the gate? Is this Trump's wall? I don't know. Is this what America looks like to the outsider now? It made me think of your equity and equality.
And the door and the fence.
And the fence, I thought, that's great. And then I thought the fence, Jesus, that Trump's wall. With 3 models of it. I can't get this stuff out of my head. Anyway, so these are some examples of how I'm trying to, now as a visual artist, imagine trying to express those ideas without appropriating. Like I could put a black teenager in the back of a cruiser and paint it, and I will appropriate that image. Part of my resistance to appropriation came out of the big controversy at the Whitney Biennial this year, where a German artist made a painting of representing Emmett Till's corpse in his open casket, where he was beaten to death in 1954 by racist white men. And that was really the start of the civil rights movement, that incident in the South. And it created a big controversy in New York about who had the right to take that image and reproduce it. And it created a theoretical and aesthetic argument with institutions of art and white arbiters of art, and certainly created a gut reaction from a lot of black individuals who live in New York and who were artists. So it was a very interesting event that was happening early in this. So I'm working on I got another big, ugly, scary painting called The Open Casket of the White Demagogue. And I'm making a sculpture too with Barbie dolls and assault weapons and stuff like that. But I didn't put it in there. Okay, next slide, please. I can't keep up with this weight. Okay, just quick, here's my bio. Just so you know, crazy. I'm from Toronto. I'm self-taught artist, former computer programmer, and teacher. My interests include social justice art, music synesthesia art, because I paint music, which is weird. Paint the form and feeling of music. And I'm interested in digital engagement of art and audiences. I seek to create art that has social relevance through collaboration and social engagement. I grew up in a working class, richly diverse neighborhood of downtown Toronto, now gone forever due to gentrification. I grew up up with a lot of really different people. And I was poor, and there was a certain kind of neighborhood that will never exist again. So I guess that's part of why I'm an artist. I'm trying to tell a narrative of things that I knew, right? I knew all kinds of people. I saw racism. I saw and experienced abuse and violence because my friends were Chinese or black. Still, most people I knew were fair-minded and not overtly racist. But we all carry biases with us all the time. Yeah. Well, I mentioned skin tone, because I knew a couple of friends of mine who were black. One was an octoroon, and you never know he was black. You couldn't tell by looking at him. And that's even an issue now when you talk of, what does this term racialized mean? Like even that term has many questions attached to it. And then I knew another black friend of mine who was an albino. And he had red hair and pink eyes. So like, you know, what does it mean?
Being black.
He was a friend, that's what it meant. Okay, so I looked at my past and informed me about matters today. I think I was very lucky to grow up with these people I grew up with. I don't see it in Ottawa. I don't see it in parts of Toronto anymore. That was a time and a mixing that doesn't exist. I had some Indigenous friends too, the Pine Brothers. I went to school with them. We all were together. I didn't know anything back then, but I knew they were my friends. Okay? Okay, I started to see these implicit biases that were and are part of me. And they were part of the surroundings and of society's institutions that showed their faces to me and my friends. I seek to create art that is social relevance through collaboration and social engagement. And then, okay, this was the original call that was put out, and it attracted a lot of interest, and then I had to shut the door because it was getting too big and crazy, and I didn't know how to manage it. But it's starting to really happen now. Okay, the Off-White Show, a collaborative examination of white privilege from the inside and the outside. The inside look. Quote, white artists will be challenged to self-examine and express their own white privilege, something often invisible to them due to our biased outlooks and the inherent power structures in our society. The outside in look. Quote, artists of color, however you want to, I don't know what term to use, just define it yourself. They will be asked to express the face and form of white privilege as it has been presented to them. They've seen it their whole life. And this is the difficult dialogue that must be undertaken in all issues of race. So how do we create a safe space to do that? I think being artists, we can. So one motivation for this show is to allow white artists an avenue into discussions of race without having them appropriate or interpret other stories, images, and perspectives. It will challenge them to examine their own whiteness and what it means in terms of social power. Now, I showed you those abstract pieces because if I'm going to make a painting about whiteness and I can't show an Indigenous person or a black person or a Chinese friend I used to know, it's kind of hard. It's a really tough intellectual artistic challenge. And I think a real artist would like to take that challenge on and try it. It's really cool if you try it. You got to go deep inside. Okay, it is hoped this, okay. Another motivation is to allow artists of color to feel free to appropriate aspects of white culture and thereby overturn the power imbalance created by our implicit assumptions of normalcy within our racialized society. Basically saying, okay, give people license to show me what you've seen your whole life. Stick it in my face and I got to deal with it. But, you know, make it safe for me too. Be gentle, you know, it's going to hurt.
Okay. That's good. It's a good rule. Yeah.
Okay. It is hoped that this will lead to a great deal of shared experience and learning. Perhaps we can create a sharing experience during the show or at its culmination, involving artists and audience participants. All forms of artistic expression are valid for this multidisciplinary show, and interested artists who identify as racialized and artists who admit to being white are welcome. Okay?
Okay.
Ambulance on standby in case you have a heart attack.
But it's happening. I've been talking to Canada Council about this, and people really like it. Now, right now, I don't have a venue for a group show yet. We have a nucleus of, we got a nucleus of tight people right now who are waiting for us to get a venue for a group show. But you can see this is going to be a series of shows. One thing will build on another. Start small, one step at a time, one success leads to another success. So I'm interested in putting this out there to see who's interested. This is not for everyone. This is more political. It's also very psychological. I was talking with Alejandro earlier and saying, in his presentations you'll see a very academic, erudite man. And he's dealing with the bureaucracy of the institution. And he's dealing with processes and procedures and principles and committees. And I hate all of that. I want to make the art. And I want to start a fire and shove it up. I want to do something that is really stimulating to the artist. And Canada Council likes this in a lot of ways. I think I can get funding for my solo show from a Concept to Realization grant and also a digital strategy grant because of the digital stuff in there. Some of my secrets on the digital stuff, I haven't told you all the details to bore you, but it's going to be really interesting. It's going to take time, it's going to take courage, and it's going to take hard work. But
So,
yes.
if I may